So at the end, I saw Jesus on the cross, and it's not like I saw his mouth move or anything, but I just heard him say, I love you so much. I would have did this just for you. But I also knew that just for you meant any one single person, you know. And so how he looked, I know people, well, how did he look?
Today, I'd like to welcome Paul Flentge to the show. Paul, welcome. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show, and like to, appreciate being able to share the story.
Yes. Yeah, I'm so excited to hear your near-death experience story. I have not heard it yet, and the only thing I know is that it happened in 1999. And so I love it when I don't know anything about your story, and I'm going to hear it for the first time as well as the listeners. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing I'll ask you is just to share anything that you want to around your NDE and or before, leading up to, any kind of preface to your NDE that you'd like us to know.
Okay. So my near-death experience was what I would consider, it was more of a spiritual warfare experience with, at the very end, the near-death experience. So it was actually 90%, the spiritual warfare that I heard, saw, and felt. But then at the end, that 10% of the 3 hour, 4 hour period that this happened ended with the near-death experience part. So saying that, I grew up in a small country town, and I was really, it's important to share, some of the history to what led up to this experience. So I grew up in a small country town. Everybody knew everybody. I was actually a pretty quiet, shy, timid kid, normal, play baseball, ride motorcycles. I was big into motorcycles. All the normal things a country kid would do. Very close to my family. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had a house full of love. We really did. At June 6, 1988, me and my mom went to town and to run a couple errands. And when we drove back up, we noticed, I found my father passed away. So that was the first real blow of life that happened to me. I was absolutely devastated, lost, and so empty. I never knew a person could even feel that way. I was a kid, I was a child. And so I believe in spiritual warfare, and I believe that all of your thoughts, there's spirits around us at all times, good and the bad, and they're fighting over us. And some people believe it and some people don't. So right after this event happened, my father died. We rushed him to the hospital. I saw how blue and purple he was. I heard the machines, ding, then I heard them shocking him. We're right outside the room that this is going. This is in 88. We went to I don't want to mention the hospital, but we were right outside of the room. I heard those noises. They implanted in my head the picture of how he looked, the CPR, the whole experience. Could not get it out of my mind. And then I started hearing the whispers, if you wouldn't have gone to town for, to get what you wanted to get, he would still be alive because you would have been there. Y'all would have had enough time to call the ambulance. It'd have been a lot. So I believed the lie. The enemy will tell you a lie. And I bought into it. So with that guilt and all of that, I was too young. I was just a kid. Uh, it quickly led into drinking and marijuana use. Shortly after 15, 16 years old, a little bit of cocaine, a little bit of meth. I wasn't like big into that, but I definitely, 4 or 5 times a year, but drinking was like all the time. Um, Smoking marijuana, it was regularly. It was how I dealt with it. Anything I say, it's very humbling being on here. I hope that the things that I went through, if I could encourage any teenager, any young person, or any adult, to stay away from all of this, that is what I would say. It's not lifting up the things I did. This is my mistakes. Everything in this whole podcast is going to be about one big life mistake.
I want to just stop you really quick because I have a curiosity here.
Okay.
So I'm a recovered alcoholic addict. I have 10 years as of December 7th, 2023. And so I completely understand coping and using alcohol and drugs to quiet some of those voices or quiet the mind. And so I'm curious if that was effective for you in quieting down. You said you started to hear whispers. Did it actually quiet it down for a minute?
For a minute.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then they kind of come back and even come back worse. It's not a cure, but yes, yeah, it helped. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely helped for 3-4 hours or, whatever, a few days or what, yeah, it was only temporary. It was not the fix.
Right. Yes, it's just a temporary.
Yeah.
The way I describe addiction and alcoholism is it is an attempt to solve a problem. Yes. And to fill a God-sized hole. Actually, that's what I believe. Yeah. And so without having anyone to really talk to or help us with those whispers and the voices that, we're hearing or the things that we're sensing, it's easy for us to turn to something that might give us temporary relief.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, continue with your story. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So no, that was good questions. So by the age, it's real easy. Let me think, 16, I got charged with a DWI. 17, I got charged with a DWI. 18, 16, 17, 18. By the time I graduated high school, I'd already been charged now I'm saying charged, I'm not saying convicted, but charged 3 times with 3 different DWIs and countless of other mishaps, just little, little run-ins with the law here and there. I was an adrenaline junkie. I can't tell you how many times, that there was a near-death experience in the normal realm, of we almost just wrecked, or whatever. I mean, it's countless. It really is. There's a group of guys that were out of control with partying. They were, and I fell right in it. And it's just like, it was crazy. The end of 95, I also said I struggled with alcohol. Well, depression and anxiety, and alcohol, they're brothers and sisters, and they go hand in hand. And so, I mean, I had depression that I just didn't want to live. I mean, I hate this part of the story because I have to be honest though. I didn't want to live and spiraled out of control.
I want to thank you for sharing all of this because I know that as I'm listening to you, and I may have not been as extreme with the recklessness, but I was reckless. And having been in the AA program for over 10 years now, listening to countless stories, there are so many people who did suffer from anxiety and depression and who didn't have the will to live, or just wanted to exit somehow, but wasn't sure, why or how. And so I actually appreciate you sharing all of this because I think it's super relatable. And I don't think that you and I are the only ones who had this experience. I think there are a lot of people out there who were in the same shoes as us, and that anxiety and depression just expresses in, different ways.
Let me kind of stop and because I'm fixing to get into the meat of the story.
Yeah.
So I'm being reckless with my life, but let me stop and go back a little. I was raised in a church, and I guess you could say a Pentecostal church, where some people believe the Spirit only moved in the Old Testament, in the old days, or in the New Testament, but that was old Bible days. But what I'm sharing is I have seen the supernatural or spirit, the Holy Spirit move in our church. I saw a family friend when I was like 10 years old, 12 years old, fall and hit her head on the back of a pew. And it was absolutely no way that she faked this. Absolutely. I knew this lady personally. She was like an aunt to me. I mean, I knew this. So I saw that. I even talked to her about that, asked her if it hurt and what were you thinking? She says, Paul was just praising God. And next thing I know, I'm waking up on the floor. I didn't know I hit my head or anything. She didn't have a mark or anything. My grandmother would speak in tongues. And so I would go over to her house when I had a burden, a heavy heart, something going on in my crazy life. And I would ask her to pray for me. And she was such a sweet lady. Of course I will. And she would just start praying. And within a minute or two, she would start speaking in tongues. This is a lady who prayed, who played the TV on Christian stations, played praise and worship music just continuously. She just stayed in that spot. So I knew my grandmother was not faking with speaking in tongues. I knew not only that, but when she would usually have her hand on my head while she's praying. I felt the presence too. You just feel it. It's not fake. So for anybody that's never had family or close members that you knew you could trust, I can understand if somebody doesn't believe in that. But I had people in my life that I knew behind the doors, they was telling me the truth. I knew them like I knew my parents, like I knew my aunt and uncle and my grandmother. So I had experienced a couple of those, knowing that there's spirits. This one day, me and my friend get off work and we go drinking and we're riding down the road, and we were I can still see it. We're on a country back road, and the road is very uneven, and it's like this, we're hitting these bumps, and it felt like I was on a roller coaster ride. That's feeling you get in your stomach, and I got so caught up in that I didn't even see the corner coming, and I see him doing this, and by the time I see it, I turned the corner, slammed on the brakes. We're doing 50 miles an hour into an oak tree. So my windshield was fixed at this time and busted it again, totaled my truck, threw him into the windshield. He made a bubble into the windshield and then a bubble in the bubble, which was the imprint of his head. I bent the steering wheel with my nose. Like, you know how hard you got to hit a steering wheel? So blood is everywhere. He's bleeding out of his nose, and I hear him open the door, and he just starts moaning, and he falls out, and everything's registering like what just happened. Oh my goodness! I jump out of the truck, run around, and I'm hollering his name. Oh my goodness! Oh dear God, help me! I done did it. He's just moaning. He's not responding, and then about a minute later, he's bleeding out of his ears also. That's when I noticed not only out of his nose, but his ears. I'm like, man, I almost killed this guy. I don't know if he's going to, make it or what? So he snaps out of it. We get into another vehicle, take off. That was my rock bottom moment. I'm now without a vehicle. And my compassionate, childlike person is coming back, and not the one that don't care about your life on the highway anymore. I almost killed somebody, but I almost killed somebody else. And that's what got me, you know. So I hit rock bottom because I didn't say this in the story, but I had already been going to counselors for years. And we built up to a spot where I think I was taking like 15, 17, 18 pills a day of all these. He said, he told me, he says, I'm going to make you a cocktail, you know, a cocktail. And because nothing's worked, I've been on lithium, Librium, you know, everything. He says, the next step is going to the hospital to take these shocks, like they shock your brain and try to stimulate. And it's just kind of weird, but that's how depressed I was. After the wreck, I just start praying, going back to my roots, praying to God. And let me go back to one night that I didn't say right before the wreck. So one night, me and my friend are at this house, and we're doing crack. And he walks out of the room to go do whatever. And I just talked to God, out loud like this. I said, you know what, God? I said, I was hurting, bitter, in pain. I said, excuse me. I said, you know what, God? I've always believed in you. I've always believed that you gave your son, Jesus, on the cross. I believe he died for us. I believe he chose to go there. I don't believe they took him. I believe he never sinned. I believe all of that. I believe, you know, he died on the cross for our sins. I said, but I don't really believe that you know what I'm going through. I don't believe you know the pain that I'm in. I can't break this depression and anxiety and alcoholism and all this stuff. And I just don't know if you really love me the way that, you know, people say in the Bible. I'm not sure if I don't believe that, you know. So that's one little night. Okay. Then I wrecked my truck. Now I'm starting to come around. I took all the medicine that the doctor gave me, and then I just automatically start winging myself off, and I'm searching for a career. I told God, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have a clue, but I know what I'm not supposed to be doing. And this whole life, I'm not supposed to be doing this. This is not it. So I start focusing on a career. I get a decent job for 2 years. I'm focused on a career. I'm focused on a career, and I'm going to say I'm doing pretty good, but I'm not trying to mislead, you know, anybody. I would still have a little night here or a little night there. I've really shifted that alcoholic, that, you know, addictive to workaholic. And I mean, I'm just working. And I'm trying, and I really am trying. I'm enjoying it. It's not, my mental is better, and things are, you know, I'm just a lot more of on schedule, and, you know, just doing a lot better 9-10 months into this job.
Yeah.
The weight of it finally started catching up. And I had these little problems that were just thorns in my side that I couldn't quite figure out the pieces of the puzzle to a certain part of this job. I'd had problems sleeping, and I'm sorry for how it takes me a while to tell this story. So I'm sorry, but thank you for your patience. So I'd had problems sleeping. So I did have some sleeping pills that I started taking a little bit again. And so it's some medicine, I'll say some medicine. And this particular night, the stresses of the world, of the job, caught up with me. And I remember I was trying to work on that schedule. I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I took a pill. You know, you're supposed to take a pill, lay down, and, you know, so I took another half pill. You know, I had 5 pills, and I was sipping on a beer. I wasn't like slamming them or nothing, just sipping on a beer. And I think I had a couple of over the counter, like herbal something too, just some type of to help wind you down. Because I was a very high strung person just by nature. And after about a pill and a half, maybe 2 pills, 2.5, I don't know, somewhere in there, I started kind of hearing the voice again, when I drank and drank heavily, sometimes I would hear a voice, but no, it wasn't, I was always like, is that my thought, or whatever. And it's not always your thought. So I heard this voice and I just, I wound up chopping up a pill and snorting one. Why? I don't know. Just nothing was working, and I needed it to work, and so that intensifies it to a whole nother level. And then, I took another half. I took 4.5 of these pills, and by the time I got to the other half, I knew I had done something that I knew I had opened up a door. I heard a voice, and I actually talked back to it, and it was. I'm going to leave some of this basic. I really don't want to get into in detail the conversation at this part. Some of it I will. But
is this where the NDE happens?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah, it's right here. Yeah, and it's about a 3 to 4 hour period. I believe it was somewhere around 10:30ish at night is when this all started playing out till about 2 or 2:30. I have my reasons for believing that, but so I hear this voice, and basically what the voice does a lot of times is that the enemy, I'm going to call him the enemy. So if you're going down the car, driving down the car, I think everybody talks a little bit to themselves, and, if you're driving or cleaning your house or whatever, and you hear a little voice and you're like, you know what, so-and-so talked bad to me yesterday, or so, or whatever kind of little problem that, we all have problems. It's hard to get along with everybody. You know what? You ought to call them and tell them, or when you see them, you need to tell them about, man, when I hear that, when I think that now, no, you know what? No, I don't, any type of confrontation. No, don't get me wrong. There's things you got to deal with in life, but like, I don't want to argue over anything. Nothing, so this voice gets real intense, and when I'm telling him no, and then when he came back the second time, I was paralyzed with fear, because there was nothing at that moment that I was able to do, and I knew he was in full control. And so I was terrified, like no fear that I can compare to. With I'd had a gun or two pulled on me in that the past that I didn't talk about. I'd had, it's a different level of fear, and the spirit realm is intensified so much. So
did you, at this point, were you in your body or out of your body? Were you dead? Did you know you were dead? Tell me about that.
No, I was still in my body, but it was like I've never been in a coma, but that is what I would imagine a coma felt like, with me being able to hear the good and the bad argue over me. Though I couldn't move. I had no control, and so this is where it kind of gets kind of weird. And so they were arguing, and I heard them arguing over me, and I did hear some things about like the seals, which is in Revelation, you know, so I don't know exactly what, you know, so, most of what they said I could understand. There was a time or two where they talked back and forth and I didn't understand. But so this is when this all powerful, you know, spiritual warfare, my spiritual eyes and spiritual ears were opened. And so I'm sitting at the kitchen table and my hand just reached for the TV control. I didn't, but my hand did. You know, I picked it up, I cut the TV on, and it went to God. I believe God was showing me things. Even though I was in a different, that's just what I believe. So I flipped to the Spanish channel and stopped, and I understood every single thing they were saying. I sat there and watched it for 1-2 minutes, and I knew it wasn't, I knew what language it was, and I knew I didn't speak it, but I was just blown away. I understood what they were saying, you know? And then I flipped to the next channel, and it was a scary movie on. And I've watched a couple, but I never was that movie watcher. And, you know, you can get a little bit of the chills watching a scary movie. Well, as soon as I hit that channel, I knew what I believe. You know, everything I'm sharing is just my personal belief.
Yeah.
I believe it was, you know, influenced by the enemy. And I felt it with such intensity, like 15 seconds of that movie, which it wasn't even on a scary part. It just had that music in the background, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And I changed it. No. And so then, so I like all kinds of music. And when I listen to classic rock, R&B, old school soul, you know, just everything, a little bit of country. Well, when I would drink, I would like a little bit of hip hop. And so in 1999, I'll just say it, Juvenile had a smash club hit. And when I turned it on that channel, it was like at the very beginning, it was like I can't explain it, like the timing, the song instant, like I hadn't heard one note, it came on, boom, right when I hit it. And before he ever raps anything, I heard the music, and I heard it in a different way, and I knew that it was worldly music, and anything worldly opposes God, you know. And so I felt how that song had been inspired, and it was inspired by the enemy, you know, to get people out there, you know, shaking and living wild and this and that. You know, I listened to another song right after that. It was another hit song of that year. And I heard the same thing. I could hear how I just could hear it in a spiritual way. I don't know how to explain it. So,
because when all of this started, you said that you heard the spiritual warfare. So both the good and the not good, or the enemy and the all powerful. Were you still hearing them as you were having this experience with the TV and the channels?
No, no, it's almost like, I don't know what they were doing. I don't know where they were, but it's like I was specifically being shown something right now. Okay. This is a message to me.
Yeah.
Opening my eyes and my ears to the reality of how everything is. It's just, if you don't pay attention, you'll be humming and singing those words and you don't even know what you're saying.
Oh, for sure. For a long time, I am always telling my kids, I'm actually very, very discerning of what I listen to, because every word we speak is an affirmation. And so if we're singing lyrics to a song over and over and over again, we're affirming whatever that message is by using it. So
yes, ma'am.
I totally am in line with what you're saying right now.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. So I cut the TV off, and I say that the whole time my hand was with the remote, it did not feel like it was me. It was like I was being shown something.
Mhm.
Set the TV remote down, and I remember having I started having visions now, and I had one of the first visions I remember was a clear vision of never heard of this guy ever, Phil Driscoll. The CD is called Plugged In, and I saw the cover of of the CD. It's just a vision. What was kind of neat is the names of the song, which are on the back of the CD usually, were off to the side of the front of the CD. And when I'm seeing this vision, it's like I start hearing the first song play, and I'm like, wow, And I didn't say that. I'm blown away at everything. Like I said, I still feel like I'm kind of like in a coma. I'm just at the mercy of everything that's going on. And so I see this vision of the CD, and his song starts playing, and about 30 seconds into it, I just think next, and it goes to the next, which the first song, as soon as it came on, just like the TV, like the songs I had heard, I felt this music, and it was pure, and it was godly music. It was, it was inspired by God. I could tell the difference. I mean, it was really easy, So I say next, and I go to the second song, and I believe it's the second one. It's Jesus Be My Friend. And I remember listening to it, had a more beat that I was more in sync with. And I remember having control and thinking, I want to hear the whole song on this one, But then all the rest, I would listen to. I liked them all, but I listened about 30, 45 seconds, think next, and it would just go through. So I went through that whole CD. Okay. Then I saw a picture of a time clock, and it was a vision of a time clock, and there was a piece of paper beside it, and it said like smiles. You never know what your customer's going through. Just a simple smile can make or change their day. Be sure to smile at your customer. I specifically zoomed in on that piece of paper, and I read word for word. I saw it. I zoomed in, and I read it word for word. I don't know why I focused and zoomed, but I did. So then I saw a vision as if I was looking through somebody else's eyes, and I saw this person was at a park, and there was stepping stones, and I'm looking through this person's eyes, and I'm seeing the tennis shoes and the legs walk on these stepping stones, and about 3 or 4 steps, and one foot went off of the stepping stone, and the next foot went onto the stepping stone path again, but one foot went off into the grass, one went on. Okay, I'm seeing these visions. Then I saw let's see, I saw all the cell phones. It wasn't, you couldn't have a cell phone back then at your work and walk around talking like people, texting, and that wasn't there. I saw the workplace, and I saw all of that. I saw self checkouts. I saw a lot more vision. I saw a lady at a church. She turned, looked at me, and smiled. I saw, which I didn't know in the vision, it was at a church. I didn't know, I saw all these visions. So at the end, I saw Jesus on the cross, and it's not like I saw his mouth move or anything, but I just heard him say, I love you so much. I would have did this just for you. But I also knew that just for you meant any one single person, and so how he looked, I know people, well, how did he look? All these pictures, blue eyes and this and that. What I saw, if you ever saw that movie, Mel Gibson wrote it, The Passion for Christ, I think. Is that it?
Yeah,
You know how beat down and how beat up he looked at the end? Is that the same one we're talking, that movie?
I think so. It's been a
Yeah.
while since I've
I
watched
like
it.
that's the one that I saw. He looked like almost unrecognizable. He didn't look like the beautiful, glorious. He looked like he had just died on the cross for
Mm.
me and for you. And that's what I saw. That's what the vision that I saw of him. So after this and all those visions, I start hearing, and back to kind of the battle going on, and I see an angel in front of me, and he doesn't have wings. It's just he just looks like a man, but I can see through him, but he just looks like a man. And I just knew what he was there for. Let me share, but right before this also, um, when they were going back and forth again, I also, the devil had given me all this fear. And then I received all this peace. But then fear again, to such a level, I remember screaming. And what it was I was showed that the devil can hand out fear, which everybody knows that, but he can also hand out peace and false peace and all that trickery, because it was fear, peace, fear to the extreme. And I knew that peace was handed out from him. I knew it. And then the angel handed out peace, and the angel handed out peace, and it was so peaceful. And he told me everything's going to be okay. And I knew at that moment that everything was going to be okay. I just knew it. So then I see an angel standing before me, just looked like a normal man. And so this is where it gets really intense. It's kind of like what you would see at a movie. So he steps to me, and he's doing the cross sign. He says, "In the name of Jesus, you must go." And I'm feeling this, I'm going to call it like a tornado effect in my stomach. And he says it again. He says, "In the name of Jesus, you must leave." And this tornado effect is getting stronger and stronger. And then he says, "I have the authority. In the name of Jesus, you must flee." And at that time, I could feel his grip loosening as this tornado is, I call it tornado, is going faster and faster. And I breathed out once and twice, and I saw the spirits go. And the angel told me, "It's important that you know the good was chased out by the bad, not the bad. The bad was chased out by the good, not the good chased out by the bad." So at that point, I felt a pull at the back of my neck, and I saw this double vision thing going on. It was very weird. And before I know it, the double vision left, but I was seeing up here. And so that's when I realized I was out of my body and I'm floating up to the ceiling. And so he took me up slow, and I believe that he did that to show me that this was not a vision. This was real. And so as I'm going up, I remember having my conscience thinking, like I said, like, out of all the craziness and all the things you did, you finally did it. You finally crossed the line. You finally messed up. I was scared. I was scared. And so I just remember going up to the ceiling in this fear and looking up. And as soon as I got to the ceiling, I was engulfed in this light, just completely engulfed in it. It was bright, but not blinding. It was vibrant. It was alive. It was all love. It was all powerful. It was all powerful. And at that moment, it was showing me all mercy. And that's, and I was there for probably 15, 20 seconds. I didn't go to heaven. I didn't go to hell. I didn't go anywhere else. Just right there, 15, 20 seconds. And then boom, I was instantly back in my body and left, just energyless. Went to bed that night. Over the next couple of weeks, it actually took some time of me remembering this full event.
Yeah.
And, I've had friends there, family friends, some will laugh, some will believe it's okay. Some will be, oh, you hallucinated. No, I've done that too before. This was not that. So, over the next year, first of all, that night was so powerful. I couldn't work for about 4 to 6 weeks. I took off. I didn't work. It was that powerful. I was trying to, because now my mind is open that there's a spirit world around us. Like we're always told that, but like now I know. It was just, it was disturbing. It was,
Yeah.
So over the next year, I get back into the workforce. All I'm trying to think about, I didn't write none of this down or think about it at the moment. I was just focused on trying to get back to normalcy, what I knew before, but it's too late. You already seen, you can't, it's too late. So as I get back into the workforce, and I'll struggle over the next year with picking up all these vibes, or that's a whole nother conversation. But so about 2 months later, a friend hands me a CD and it's Phil Driscoll. I've never heard of him, never seen him, except for in that vision. And I go to play it and I'm like, oh my goodness. Wow. I got a job and I'm floating around. I go to a job site, go to clock in, saw the sign. It says Smiles. I read it in detail. It was the exact piece of paper. I'm at a park walking with a friend. I'm walking, I look down, I walk on a stepstone off and right back on. And at that moment, I knew that was my eyesight that he had shown me walk through. I'm at church, see an elderly lady look over and smile. Just this stuff went on and on and on and on. It was mind blowing. It was so strong. I started praying every day, all throughout the day. Anytime I got an opportunity, dear God, please just show me, tell me what this is. Tell me the meaning. What am I supposed to do? I mean, it was just overwhelming,
Yeah. I have a question about, I was curious when you were sharing this as part of your experience, and now you're sharing the piece that the visions that you saw, they were actually manifesting in real life. Did you ever figure out or get any sense of why they were showing you all these pieces of the future?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for asking that. So it started bothering me so bad that I was praying and praying and praying. Dear God, what do these visions mean? And it took like 3 or 4 weeks of just praying, and then finally one day he took me back to a memory. It was that memory of that night where I was doing drugs. And I said, God, I've always believed in you. I've always believed in Jesus, but I don't believe you know what I'm going through. I don't believe you love me like they say, or the Bible says. And after he showed me that, reminded me of that memory, he spoke to me. I didn't hear it audibly. I just knew it's just like, son, not only do I know what you're going through, but I know what you're going through before you ever even go through it. And I love you more than you'll ever know. And so that is my testimony for anybody, non-believer, believer, for anybody that, struggles with God, or even a believer that they don't feel him. Like I still go through those times where I don't feel him, but I have never doubted him like I doubted him that night. So, he gifted me that vision. So it's nothing I did. In fact, the only thing I ever did was mess up continuously in my life. That's what I did. That's it. But he showed his mercy and showed me those visions. And that's my message, that, he does know everything we're going through, and he loves us, more than we'll ever know. And he wants a relationship with us. He wants us to, to search and seek him out. And I have fear. I have fear for God, and so in a respectful way, but that's my story. I appreciate you so much having me on. If you have any questions or anything,
I do. I have a couple of questions. One, I'm curious because so much of my journey has been finding peace and finding heaven through recovering from addiction. And I know that we spent a lot of time talking about the struggle that you had with alcohol and drugs and chasing adrenaline. And I'm curious if after this near-death experience, if that changed for you.
Yes, then over the next year or two, right after this, I really dug into the Bible. I mean, I had a nervous breakdown. I knew we were running out of time. That's a whole nother thing. Like, I had a nervous breakdown where I woke up in a padded room. Like it was too powerful. What I had saw. I tried to tell people, but the Spirit did this and that, and I couldn't. I still 25 years later, I still get a little bit. I gotta, slow down when I tell the story because there's no words on the spirit realm you only have words, but they're just not fit to the extent or the height of what you go through. So yes, over the next couple of years, I really dug into the Bible and really searched and seeked for his face and answers and I was feeling it. I did continue to struggle with alcohol, just alcohol. I got relaxed, I got comfortable, and the stresses of life. And it just starts out with a beer with some fajitas or a margarita with some chips and salsa, and then before you know it, you're back into 2, 3, 4 drinks, and so I flip flopped back and forth on that issue there. And the last time I drank, I heard that one little voice again, and I never picked up a drop again. I said I don't never want to do it again. And so that's all I could say. I've been really fortunate. God has had his hand in my life without a doubt over the things I've been through, and not hurting myself or hurting somebody. I really am a compassionate person, and but everything we have is a gift from God, and that's my belief. And like everything, our hand movements, our ability to talk, or, hear, go hug your child today, just it's all gifts of life.
Yeah. I'm curious too, and I have a couple of questions that I ask all my guests, but I really want to ask this first because 1999, during that time, we couldn't really talk about our spirituality or have conversations like this openly because we would be considered crazy or that there was something wrong with us. So I'm curious your experience now. I mean, there's so many people. I've interviewed tons of near-death experiencers. There's so many people sharing their near-death experiences. What is that? Does that give you validation? Like, what does that feel like for you, knowing that there's so many others who have had experiences similar to yours?
It makes it easier to share the story. I hear some people, I've ran across some people that I personally grew up with that have had an experience, but they're a little scared to, I've already experienced, I'll just say it, the laughter, the joking, some going, man, that's really, all the above. I've already, so I'm 50 years old. I'm not old, but I'm not 20s where I'm always worried about what somebody thinks. I never doubted. Whereas I hear some people wake up and they're like, did that happen? I think that happened. I'm pretty sure. No, for me, no, I never doubted. I knew it was so powerful. It was so powerful. And that's why I say when I fear God, what I actually fear is separation, because with God, you're protected against the enemy. But without, you're when you live any kind of way, you're leaving doors open. And so Yes, so there's been studies after it happened to me. I read lots of books on these things, and there was so many of these experiences happening in hospitals, especially like the cardiac arrest places where they put 4 cameras up in each corner because somebody floating above their body and telling so and so you picked up this and and maybe even telling their dad had gotten a candy bar out of the candy machine, and the sister was shooting a text and told her what the text was. Look, if you don't believe, of course people make up stories. I'm not gullible, but there are thousands and thousands of stories, and that there's no, how could you not believe? But if you've never researched and really read all of these stories, I wouldn't believe my story neither. I wouldn't, if I'd be like, man, that guy, I don't know about him. But there's no doubt in my mind. And I've been feeling a tug on my heart to share this. I shared it a year, 2 years after it happened. And I would always get a blank look on some, they're just looking at me blank faced. And I knew they wasn't believing, buying it or anything. And I'm not selling anything. I'm sharing that, we need to watch what we say, watch what we do, watch what we act, be kind to each other. This life that we're in that seems like it's everything is actually, it's just a test. It's not, people say it's not even real. It's real, but it's just a short blink of a test. And then you start life. And where you're going to go there is what's important, and how you live here.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the reasons I love interviewing people like you who've had a near-death experience, and I know it's got to be one of the reasons why my audience loves them, is because even though they differ based on our beliefs or based on our experiences, there are threads of similarities in each one, like how you knew, like you just had these visions and you just thought of the next song, and the next song played. And that's a common theme in near-death experiences, where people have a thought and then there it is right in front of them, or love, and being kind, and that it matters how we treat people, and that this is just a blink of an eye. And so I loved hearing your story and all the background. I'm so happy that you had your experience and have come through to a different experience in this world. And yeah, just such an honor and pleasure to have you here. I do have 3 questions that I ask all my guests. So before we go there, is there anything else that you want to say before we close?
Just I'm sorry it took me so long to get to the main thing. It's really important to know that all the things that led up to that night, I could have just jumped right to it, but it's just, it all ties in together. There's really nothing other than that. Just God knows everything you're going through, and before you ever even go through it, and he loves us more than we'll ever know. That's what I would say from my message.
Thank you. And no worries. The background was all part of the story. So I appreciate you giving us so much context into what your life was like before, because I think that helps us understand your experience a lot better too. So the first question that I ask all my guests is, how do you define God?
Love, all powerful, merciful, but also holds us accountable.
And the second question is, what would you say is the purpose of life?
Just to treat how we treat each other, and to be selfless and not self-centered. That's the purpose right there. To know God, to know Jesus, and to be selfless and to always think of others before you. Easy to say, but not so easy to do.
And the final question is, if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now and offer it to a younger version of yourself, what would that one piece of wisdom be?
Just trust God. That's it. Just trust God. Don't doubt. Just do it. Just trust.
So
Don't
simple.
question. Don't doubt. That's
Yep.
that was my whole, all the stuff I was talking about, even though it was played out through actions, that's what it was all about. I mean, that was part of what it was all about. Yeah. And in through hard times, depression, sad times or whatever, just thank God, for there's always something to be thankful for. So it's real simple, real short on that. Just those things right there. Yeah.
And how do people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, Paul Flentge, and they could message me if they wanted a little more detail or just to ask me questions or anything like that. What I'm sharing is just my humble belief of what happened to me, and they could message me on Facebook. Sure.
Perfect. I'll be sure to include the link to your Facebook page in the description of this show. And again, I just want to say thank you so much for being so open and so willing to share not just your story with your near-death experience, but what life was like for you and the struggles that you went through leading up to, and how your life has changed since your near-death experience. I appreciate you, and I'm just so happy that you joined me today. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on. And I've shared this story before, but never on a public platform. So I thank you for letting me share it.
Well, thank you for having this platform be the first time that you shared it openly and publicly. Now I super appreciate you even more.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.